what are you doing?
Well, I'm working on these parts for that big block Chevy.
Hey, we'll work on that next week. That Mustang needs a motor now.
No way. I'd rather have a root canal with this drill than work on your Ford again.
Oh, yeah? I always wanted to be a dentist.
Today on Horsepower TV, we'll install a new clutch on our 351 Windsor engine before we drop it into our 65 Project Pro Touring pony car. We'll also bolt on a high-performance Tremec transmission. Then, after some welding and grinding, we'll bolt up a special trans mount and new drive shaft. In our Horsepower happening, we'll tour the high-performance training center of the future out at Laramie, Wyoming. So hang on for Horsepower TV.
Welcome to the Horsepower Shop. You know, Ford Power comes in all kinds of packages. In fact, when was the last time that you saw a 68 Pro Street Falcon? Pretty cool, huh? Now, this one's hiding a nitrous-fed 351 Cleveland under the hood, and it's backed by a C4 automatic. Of course, speaking of engines, last week we pulled the old one out of Joe's Mustang and prepped a Ford Motorsports 351 Windsor to take its place. Hey, man, you've been busy over here. This engine compartment looks pretty good.
Well, thanks. I have been pretty busy, you know. But next, we need to swap out these motor mounts because, as you may remember, the 351 has a taller deck height than the old motor. So we got these mounts from John's Mustangs to make it all work. Now, what they're going to do is move the engine up a little bit, give us more clearance between the heads and these shock towers.
Now, while Joe's bolting in those motor mounts, I'm going to go ahead and get started on the clutch back here. Now, he plans on seeing a lot of street action with that old Mustang, so we wanted to choose a clutch that would have easy pedal pressure and smooth engagement. Now, right out of the crate, this old Windsor comes with a steel billet flywheel already attached. We're going to go ahead and add this Hayes street strip diaphragm style pressure plate, an organic clutch disc, and don't forget, a new throwout bearing. Our other option was this 3-finger long style clutch that Ford's used in everything from pickup trucks to passenger cars. Now, the 3 fingers are adjustable to put a little more clamping force on the clutch disc, and hey, that might be good for repeated off-the-line launches, but you're going to pay for it with increased pedal pressure. Of course, whenever you install a new clutch assembly, it's not a bad idea to install new attaching hardware as well. Oh, and don't forget, give them a dab of red thread lock. There we go. Just to help them hold their torque.
Since that 351 makes about twice as much horsepower as the old 5-liter, we're going to mate it up with this Tremec TKO 5-speed overdrive. Now, besides its lack of torque capacity, this T5 tranny we took out of the Mustang is, well, seen its better days. Now, we got our Tremec from Jim Swar Automotive, where it was modified with a shortened input shaft, which makes it the same length as a top loader. That means we can use a stock length drive shaft, plus the bow pattern here allows it to mate up to a stock bell housing. Now it has movable shifter locations, plus the gears inside are 8620 steel alloy supported by fully rollerized bearings. This is one nice piece.
Now, in the interest of safety, we're going to go ahead and install this Lakewood blow-proof bell housing. And to make it work, we had to remove about a ½ inch of material right here on this flange next to the header pipe. And over on the other side, we had to remove a similar amount to clear the clutch pivot ball mount. Oh, and don't forget, you're also going to have to transfer your throwout fork from your old bell housing.
Now, to locate the transmission properly in the tunnel, Jim Swar also makes this cross member. Now, what it does is move the mount back a little bit and drop the trans down about a ½ inch. This is going to keep our trans tunnel surgery to a minimum and hopefully allow us to keep the original console. Now, as soon as Chuck gets through tightening there, we'll be ready to drop this thing in.
All right, let's lower it down. All right, keep coming.
How's it look?
Looking good back here. Let me get these hoses out of the way. Okay, keep coming. Keep coming. There we go. All right, slow, slow. All right, keep coming. There we go. We're looking good over here.
Time to move it back.
Yeah, let's lower it just a little bit more.
Okay. Well, it's a pretty tight fit, but I got to tell you, that thing slid in easier than we thought it would. Now we got to get the car up in the air so we can install that Tremec.
Now, while we're doing that, stay right where you are, because we're going to be back with more Horsepower TV right after this.
Yeah, it looks good. Hey, welcome back to the shop. Well, we got our Ford Motorsports 351 dropped in. Now it's time for the Tremec. While Chuck gets the car up in the air, I'm going to go ahead and fill this thing full of transmission fluid while I get to the drain plug. Now, unlike some other transmissions, the Tremec doesn't use 90-weight gear lube. No, instead, the manufacturer recommends 3 quarts of this Dextron 2 fluid.
Well, everything's looking pretty good under here. Now, we got plenty of clearance between the oil pan and the steering rack. And over here, with the head pipe, looks like it's going to be a little bit tight, but I don't think it's anything that a good muffler shop can't handle. Now, this is the real problem, though. The clutch linkage is going to interfere with the bell housing flange right here, so we're going to have to break out the grinder and clearance that later on. But first, let's get the transmission in, get everything into position, and then we'll see where we are.
Well, after bolting up our transmission to the bell housing for a little test fitting, we discovered we also have an interference problem up here with this floor brace. So we're going to have to grind on it a bit before we can properly locate the trans.
Get rid of those sharp edges. All right, now the transmission's already in place. And here's where we had to clearance the bell housing for the clutch linkage. Now let me show you another little trick that bought us even more room. We took this pin here and moved it from the inside of the lever to the outside. And what that does is moves the clutch push rod about a ½ inch further outboard. Now that pin was just pinned in place. We ground it off, moved it to the other side, and now we can weld it. Oh, and one more thing. I went ahead and checked the clearance around the exhaust with this pipe in place, and figured out that we needed a little more clearance right in here, so I just touched it up with the grinder.
Well, back here we've got some good news and bad news. The good news is our shifter pokes up through the stock location, which means no more tunnel surgery, and we get to keep the original console. The bad news is, even with this modified cross member, the attaching hose of the trans mount are about a ½ inch too far back. So we're going to take that mount off and re-drill the hose where it attaches to the trans after we get it supported on this jack again. There, that ought to do the trick.
A few weeks back, we put a new 9-inch rear end in Joe's Mustang, along with a new drive shaft. But with the new engine and trans in place, we threw the tape to it, and guess what? We need another new drive shaft. The T5 is not quite as long as that new Tremec, so our friends at DTS whipped up this drive shaft for us, and not only is it the correct length, but it's also got the right yoke for that big Tremec.
Now, here's something to think about if you're going to take on this swap yourself. Older 351 Windsors come with a Boss for a mechanical fuel pump. Our newer crate motor didn't, so we're going to install this electrical pump that we got from Holley. Well, all things considered, this is a pretty good spot to mount it right up here. Like all electrical fuel pumps, this one pushes fuel better than it pulls, so we want to mount it as close to the gas tank here as possible. Now, we'll need to install a new fuel regulator up in the engine compartment later to keep the pressure at 7 psi. But right now, I want to mark a couple of spots to drill some holes.
Well, it looks like the pressure's on us to take a little bit of a break right now. But while we get the Mustang down, don't you get up, because we'll be back with more Horsepower TV after this.
Hi, welcome back to Horsepower TV and our Pro Touring Pony project. Well, it's been a lot of work and we're not done yet. But this thing's really starting to look like a street machine now.
You bet it is. Now, as far as our clearance concerns go up here in the engine compartment, well, they were pretty much handled with the engine mounts and the headers. And underneath, well, all I got to say about that is the grinder really got a workout. Now, I'm not much of a Ford guy, but man, I got to admit, this is a pretty cool engine swap.
Really? Well, listen, I know where I can get this 460 engine. My neighbor's got a Fiesta in his garage. We can take the motor.
Take a siesta on the Fiesta, man. I said this was a cool engine swap. Not that I'm crazy. What do you say we finish up what we got going here, and let's start with the radiator.
Good idea.
Once it's bolted down, we can reconnect the hoses, the wiring for the fan, and refill the coolant.
Even old Frankenstein needed a jolt of electricity to get going, and well, so does our Mustang. We picked up one of these Holley Annihilator race cells. It's totally sealed, and it'll mount just about anywhere. It cranks out 800 cold cranking amps, and since it's sealed, we won't have to worry about corrosion on the post here or the cables. Now, to keep it in place, we also picked up one of their cool billet hold-downs.
Now, you might remember last week Joe showed you Holley's new 650 CFM vacuum secondary carb, and this week I get to bolt it on. But I can tell just by eyeballing things that, man, we've got some serious hood clearance problems, especially once the air cleaner gets on there. Now, it looks like I'm going to have to try and find a hood with a scoop on it.
Yeah, see if you can get one of those cool cow induction jobs like we see at the drag.
Now, that'll look good on here.
While Chuck's getting on the phone, I'm going to get on this fuel regulator. Our new fuel pump's going to be putting out a lot of pressure, so we got to regulate it to 7 psi. Otherwise, the needle and seat won't be able to close properly and the carb will be constantly flooding. Now, using this bracket here, we're going to mount it right here to the fender well. That's because the fuel line comes in on this side. Now, it feeds right in here to the bottom of the regulator, and we'll have our choice of outlets. Plus, the pressure adjuster is going to be on top for easy access.
Well, it would have been nice to hear this small block Ford fire up today, but hey, we've still got to install the exhaust, the shifter, the starter, and even that new hood.
Hey, don't forget about the ignition too. Once we wire it up, we can fire it up. Now, when we get the additional parts in, we'll get back on this project, but stay with us. We got more Horsepower TV coming up today.
Next, a sneak peek at a futuristic training center for tomorrow's builders of cool cars. Stay tuned.
And now, a horsepower happening, celebrating the people, places, and events of the high-performance lifestyle.
This week, we join a caravan of cool cars heading east across the country on an annual riders retreat called the AmeriCruise.
Oh man, traveling the AmeriCruise in a Brazil-built roadster, it don't get no better than this. And on this stop, we're going to get a sneak peek at a look at the future of higher education and high performance.
For several years now, Wyoming Technical Institute has offered courses in street rod building to aspiring students from around the country. And the program has been popular, although until recently confined to a cramped space with limited equipment.
Now, just take a look at the training center of the future. 50,000 square feet, where students can pursue courses in street rod and custom fabrication or chassis fabrication and high-performance engines. Now, that's with the help of the latest equipment in the industry and the country's finest faculty. Hey, what a place to turn raw material like this into finished beauties like these.
Students still supply the raw material and willingness to learn, but the school can offer everything in the way of instruction and hardware to help them achieve their high-performance career goals.
When we're up to full capacity, we should still have the ability to comfortably work on all the projects, be able to see exactly what's going on, have readily available tools to supplement the projects and so forth. So it's going to be great. Right now, according to my vantage point, I see we're sitting just under 1 degree negative.
Chassis building is a specialized craft that demands skill and quality training. It's the foundation for all student project cars, as well as the street rod curriculum. After building a solid chassis, it's time for some bodybuilding exercises.
What we got to do here, guys, is create a little bit of a template so we know how much curve to put into the hood and where that curve needs to be. Now we got to do the same exact thing for the rear side on the cowl to see what kind of curve and where we need it on the back side of the hood. Now that we have the fit, let's go to the slip roller and start our bending. Let's see how our template matches up. Hey, pretty close. Let's test fit it to the truck. Hey, that looks pretty close, but it looks like we may need a little bit more radius right through here. Let's see if we can do that.
After countless hours of bending, welding, grinding, and more of the above, students can hone their painting skills in one of the shop's 2 state-of-the-industry paint booths.
Now check out this new teaching aid that just arrived. A brand new state-of-the-art 2,000 horse engine dyno. I don't know about you, but for me, school was never this cool.
High Performance Engines completes the street rod teaching equation, and in the new facility, students can work on everything from basic carb tune-ups to building and testing their own motors. Plus, the skills they learn are valuable in the job market.
Race teams out there that are looking, you know, of course it's going to be entry level, but there's people looking for engine builders, engine tuners, dyno operators.
We don't just teach the students how to build a street rod, even though we're called the street rod course. What we teach them as far as the chassis fabrication work, the sheet metal work, the engine work, they can apply to virtually any form of motorsports. So there's jobs out there.
You can do so much in this shop. I mean, anything you would think about doing to a car, you can do in this shop. You know, I mean, they got tons of cars to work on, each in different stages. It's a great facility.
To me, I'd rather have somebody that could do, you know, a little of everything and then a lot of just one thing.
Our students have probably got to be the best students in the world. They come here with fantastic attitudes. They come here with one intention, and that's to learn everything they can out of you.
One former student went on to teach and lead Wyoming Tech. Jim Mathis has more than a few reasons to be proud of what time and hard work has created.
And back in 1976, we'd start approximately 200 students a year. Now we will start over 1,700. So I'm literally overwhelmed and very proud to wander around, talk to students, and it's very exciting for our future because we know we aren't stopping here.
Horsepower TV's Hot Parts, a close-up look at the latest in high-performance hardware.
You know, having to drop your exhaust once you drive to the drag strip can be a real pain in the tailpipe. Well, now Flowtech's got a muffler that goes from street to strip at the flip of a wing nut. Now it's called the Warlock, and it's got a fully welded case, plus it's got a plug that controls the sound when it's installed or gives you a straight shot through the muffler when it's removed. Well, now you're going to have to dig into your wallet and remove about $65 a piece for these mufflers.
The 700 R4 Overdrive is a popular trans-swap for you guys looking for better mileage, but if you're also looking for more off-the-line performance, well, now you can have the best of both worlds. ProTorque claims their 10.5-inch lockup converter can shave a half second off your ETs with its higher stall speed and torque multiplication. Now, inside it has Torrington thrust bearings, furnace brazed fins, and a hardened pump drive for longer life. How much long green will you need for one of these? About $700.
Hey, does your car see both street and strip duty? Well, if it does, now you can change your fuel system's flow characteristics at the flip of a switch with Weldon Racing's dial-a-flow regulator. Now, for street use, it drops the voltage to the pump to reduce the amount of volume without changing the pressure. Of course, once you get to the track, hey, all you got to do is flip the switch to turn the voltage back up and lower your ETs. All for about $310.
Well, good. We're going to turn up the fun level on next week's Horsepower TV. Here's a look at what you'll see.
We'll set out to build a 502 600-horse big block bracket motor, complete with hydraulic roller cam and valve train, plus a set of Edelbrock Performer RPM heads, their dual plane air gap intake, and 800 CFM carb.
It's great to be here. I'm just happy to be alive.
In our race of the week, from a fiery near-fatal inferno to an incredible comeback in Motor City, you'll discover a veteran Pro Street racer's amazing triumph.
And remember, high-performance fun is what this show is all about.
For information about the products used in today's show and more, check us out online at horsepowertv.com. Horsepower TV is an RTM production.